I got acquainted with Johnny Hill, which you talked to this morning.
Yeah.
Anyways, back several years ago. I don't know, it's been 9 or 15 or 30 years ago. It's been a long time. But they was told about up there in Amarillo that big Texan had some big old rattlesnakes, and $3 or $4 or $5,000 if you really got a good one. And he seen this old snake, and he finally got him in the rope and over at Sandy Camp, and he farted around with him, and took him half a day. He finally got him to the house and got him in a barrel. And finally got him to Amarillo and got up there and showed him that snake. And I don't know, he was a little under 8 foot long. And there's two varieties of them snakes. There's one that's real black looking, and he's real big around, but he don't ever get about 4 foot long. And then they've got the ones that's real light colored. It's kind of the prairie diamondback, and he gets real long, but he don't get very big around. But this one was one of them real long ones. But anyways, he got that snake up there, and he said, well, they'd give him $20 for him. He says, well, hell, he says, I believe I'll just take him home and let the kids play with him. By God, if that's all you're going to get for him. So he went left with the snake. I don't know what he did with him, but anyway. That's one of Johnny Hill. He's quite a character.
Yeah, Johnny's
a
quite
good
a character.
hand.
Yeah.
All you can say about Johnny, he's a dang good hand.
Yeah.
And that says it all right there. And horses, cattle, he knows livestock.
Yeah, he does.
And he's the best at what he does.
Well, Henry, when I first started doing these interviews, me and you talked last summer or last fall, I guess it was, or late last summer. And, then I've been out sick and then moved to the canyon over at Tom's. But you had one of the last Sure Enough ranch raisins back, and I just like for you kind of tell it in your own story, how your mom and daddy.
Oh, how it all started?
Yeah, started, and whenever you was born, and what kind of country it was, and how far it was to Clayton, and how far it was to Bow City. And
it started back before that country in northeastern New Mexico and Oklahoma Panhandle and some of the little bit of Texas, maybe mostly Oklahoma and Colorado and New Mexico, and that country wasn't settled. It was all open country, and two of the Light brothers started back west, and they come to the Missouri River, and this one, which would have been my on Papa's side, and they come to the Missouri River. And this one had a wife and 2 kids, and the other was single. And they're putting barrels on them wagons and to help them float, and then they're swimming them across and floating them. And if they had too heavy, they'd have to leave it on the other side. They couldn't go across and float. The team couldn't swim across with it. And they took saddle horses to help across with the wagons.
Spider right there on the brim of your head.
And anyways, this one brother says, well, I got a wife and kids. They're going to all drown in that dang river there. He says, I'm going to stay. I ain't going to do it. And this other come across the river, come on up in and settled up here around Kim, Colorado, around in Villa Green, that area up in there. There's Lahana back this way, and Clayton, and then Boy City and Raton. And there was a lot of wild horses up in there, and he got 4 or 5 waddies to go with him, and they got him some pack horses and went up there and started landing around the water holes, shooting these willer-tailed studs. A stud would come in that was white, or a paint, or anything with a lot of white on him, they'd kill him. And they'd leave all the dark-colored ones. And then they went back to Fort Lyons, Kansas.
Those Red Mounts?
they went back to Fort Lyons, Kansas, and bought some dark-colored stud horses with no white on them. And they trailed them back into this rough country up there, New Mexico Badlands, all that old canyon rough country. There was quite a few Willertails in there. And they brought them studs back loose and turned them loose with them Willertails. And they'd lay around the water holes, and anything come in that was paint or a lot of white on it, they'd kill them. And they waited a couple of 3 years, and they got several little studs that was dark colored, so they'd trap them and bring them in, trap them, castrate them, and braid them head to tail. They'd halter them and just put a short lead shank on them, and they'd braid them into the horse's tail in front of them, And they'd trail these colts, and then they'd turn some loose colts that would stay with the bunch. And they'd take these 2s, 3s, and 4s to Fort Lyons, Kansas, and sell them to the Army for remounts. And that's the way they got started in that country. And then later on, that was Isom-like. That was my granddad's dad. And anyway, he lived to be 104. But anyways, they settled in that country, and then the homesteaders, they homesteaded that country, and the cavalry didn't need any more remounts. They was kind of phasing. They had the Indians kind of where they wanted them, and they had settled in part of that country, and then they put it up homesteading it, and they homesteaded some, and then these homesteaders would starve out, and I think they might have helped some of them starve out a little bit. They was a little bit ornery. But anyways, there was a pretty good tract of land come up for sale up there, both homesteaders out, and they told Grandpa, said, for taxes, said, we'll sell you that land for 50 cents an acre. And he said, that is too damn much money, because he had some money in the Kenton Bank when they made Kenton and settled there, and that bank went broke, and they wouldn't give him his money back. They took all but a little bit of his money.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't put money in the bank anymore. He'd bury it in quart jars out there under his shed. But anyways, he wound up, he wouldn't buy that country, so old Joe Doherty had a supply company up there in Folsom, so Joe Doherty bought it. So that wound up as part of the Doherty Investment Company. And they had a lot of country back through there. I don't know, 40 or 50,000 acres, maybe more than that. But anyways, the likes just kept growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then Pop and Chester, his brother, bought a place down there called the Gross Place. And then later they divided, and then Papa bought what they call the Gripe Place, which I was raised on. Well, I was raised on both. I was a kid down there, and then they had the Gripe Place up to, I guess, just a few years back. It stayed the family. But anyways, they had a 100-year party for Papa. We all went to it, and there was about 60 or 70 people all gathered around. And I told him, I says, looky here, Papa, this is what you caused. This is your fault, this old mess right. No, he said it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I said, what do you mean it wasn't your fault? He said, that was that big, stout, gray horse I had. He called him Old Glassy. He had one part glass eye, great, big, stout horse, and he loved water. He swam like a duck. But anyways, when Papa was about 18 or 19, I think he's 19, something like that. He was young. I don't think he was 20 yet.
Now, was this your daddy or your granddaddy?
My daddy.
That's what I thought.
And he was riding dry summer on the south side, looking for strays that might have drifted down in there. And there'd been a big old cloud up towards Folsom and Travis here and Long Canyon and back up in there, hung in there all morning, and it was black in there. And anyway, he had his slicker with him, but he had his little jacket tied on behind the saddle, a little brush jacket. But Anyways, after a while, he heard the river, the creek, Dry Cimarron, heard it roaring. Weight coming up above. He's riding down through there, and directly his damn horse went to boogering and snorting, and what in the hell? And he jihawed him around, riled him around there, and there was a baby laying there on a blanket. And Keynes had a homestead just across the river there, and they had a little apple orchard. And the Jacksons had homesteaded back to the south about 2 miles up again the foothill. And what happened was this Jackson, mother and daddy, had went to Kenton to get groceries in the team and wagon, and left mother there with her 2 little brothers to babysit till they got back.
Now, how old was she then, Henry? You got any
She
idea?
was 12 or 13 years old, and then Bobby, her little brother, was 6 or 7, and then the baby was just a baby. But anyways, they'd went across the river that day or two before and picked apples over to Keene Place, and then come back home. Well, mother got up and got to looking around, and she couldn't find Buddy anywhere. And directly she seen a little tossel, way off there, just dropped off into the creek. So she went down there and laid the baby under a tree and went across the creek, started across the creek to get him. And that floodwater come down, and that trash caught her and wound her up in a big old dead cedar tree coming down through there, and it wrapped up in her, and she went to screaming and hollering, and it tore her dress off of her, but I guess she still had her bloomers on. But anyways, it tore her dress plumb off of her, and she was climbing that trying to stay alive, and she didn't know how to swim, and Papa was riding that big old stout horse called Old Glassy. So by that time the drift had went ahead, and that tree had floated up in deep water. He swum that old horse up there and grabbed her by the hair and jerked her over in front of the saddle with him and brought her out to the bank.
Yeah.
And took his little brush jacket off so she could cover herself up. And,
Sure.
And helped her back over there to the baby. And she says, well, Buddy went across the creek to pick apples. I was going to try to get him back. So he swam his horse across there and got Buddy, and brought Buddy back to her, and then helped him back home. And he said, 5 or 6 years later, well, me and her got married. That's your mother. Said, if it hadn't been for that big stout horse, you wouldn't be here.
That's a good story.
And that's the way that all come about.